And now we're joined by Shay Totten from Rights and Democracy Vermont. Welcome, Shay.
Thank you for having me here. This is great.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we are so excited to talk about all things rights and democracy.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know, what is
Sure.
the mission of Rights and Democracy?
Sure. So our basic sort of mission at Rights and Democracy is to do two things. One, right, is help people reclaim rights and to participate in democracy. And we've been around since 2015, so we're less than 2 years old, but we have quickly grown, and we have about 10,000 members throughout the state. We're also a bi-state organization, which means we also have a group in New Hampshire that's doing kind of the same thing. So you have a small staff office in Manchester, New Hampshire. We have another one here in Burlington, Vermont, and we've set up organizing teams, so communities that we where leaders come in and sort of help organize other people, other neighbors. We have them all throughout the state. So we actually, Bennington, Brattleboro, Rutland, Middlebury, Bristol, Burlington, Central Vermont, Stowe. I mean, it's just been growing and growing in that way. And so it's been, but really, we try to, our whole goal is to sort of really make grassroots democracy more of a thing in Vermont and actually help people understand that it's important to come together as communities around a whole series of issues. And so we organize around economic, environmental, racial, and social justice issues, because the bigger the tent, the more the people come in, the more avenues they have to find their voice and find a place to take action, and to then hopefully eventually build a power base and maybe run for office or be on a planning commission, but to sort of take a seat at the table and stay at the table.
Have you been involved with Rights and Democracy from the start, from its inception?
I have. I mean, I'm currently the communications director, so my job is all things sort of communication, both internally and sort of externally. Our messaging on campaigns to brochures we put together, our website, et cetera. But I was actually a founding board member with Rights and Democracy, the executive director, James Haslam, who helped to sort of bring together people around this concept of rights and democracy. He was transitioning out of being executive director of the Vermont Workers Center and reached out to a whole number of people that he'd worked with over the years to help him figure out what could be the purpose of this new organization. So I was at the first board meeting as a founding board member, which was extremely empowering and just a really great thing to sort of see what was an organization meant to be, and what could it do that other organizations weren't doing. And for a lot of us who have been working either as citizens or with myself in media for a long time and helping to lift up other people's voices, the main thing we thought was missing was an organization that was more unifying, something that really brought everybody together under these sort of core issues that we sort of, in these sort of shared values that we often have on these individual siloed issues, whether it was from gay marriage to environment, renewable energy. I mean, there's some shared community values that we have on making the world a better place and safer and for everyone to come together. That wasn't happening as we keep focusing on these single issues. Because as we focus on single issues, what we're seeing, especially now, is that it's very easy for the powers that be to play one single issue off of another single issue, or make you be on one side or the other of a single issue. But if you have people at the table who share a sense of values, we can then be supports for people whoever's rights and democracy is really under attack. And because then we can all sort of fall in behind. So whether it's Black Lives Matter or whether it's transgender rights, and I come at this from a parent perspective too, where I wanted to make sure that there were other members of my Rights and Democracy team marching with me and my family, during Trans Visibility Day, or showing up at Pride. I mean, these are the things that we bring to values, to the table that we do, and it informs and it shows that as we do this together, the more power we have, and our theme in Rights and Democracy, we think of power as organized people and organized money, because we do have a political system, and a system that really, we're trying to build a membership base that helps to sort of fuel it, kind of like what Bernie's campaign did, the sort of people-driven power that both is on the finance side, but also on the organizing side, because it matters. We do always have the slogan where it says, "Together we win," because it's true. And that's what we need. We need more people coming together, not sitting and worrying about their own little piece, because as we've seen that doesn't help us get anywhere.
So you're kind of are you working to endorse candidates, or?
Yes.
So I know I saw you at Ali Dieng's victory party
Yes.
with Jeffrey.
Yes.
And so what was to put it to something real and tangible in the media today?
Yeah.
What was your role in Ali's campaign?
Sure. So, here's a great example of just sort of, and this is how a great example of Ali's campaign was just how there's a couple things at play here. One, like me, Ali was a founding board member, at Rights and Democracy. He's been involved in Rights and Democracy since the beginning. But I've known more Ali not through that, but actually through his work in the schools. I first met him when he was doing after-school work at the Sustainability Academy, where our youngest child was at the time. And so I got to know him there as Mr. Ali, because he was just this, gregarious, incredibly charismatic, just connected person, knew every single kid's name, knew their parents. I mean, he'd been there for like 3 days, he knew everybody, and everybody knew him. And he brought everybody together, he made everyone feel welcome. And so when I heard that he might be thinking about running for this open city council seat, and even in the New North End of Burlington, for viewers who might not know, it's a fairly conservative area, largely Republican territory, very conservative Democrats. Not a place, a bastion of place for progressive or for someone like Ali, who is New American, who's Muslim. He's got beautiful family. He's a young family and struggling like every other young family in that neighborhood, who has kind of been reshaping the values of that neighborhood. So I texted him early on and said, "Are you interested? I hear you might be interested in running for city council, because if you are, I want to help." And that's what it came down to. It wasn't Rights and Democracy. It was sort of me saying, "I want to help. I want to volunteer, and I know I can get other volunteers for you." And so Rights and Democracy eventually endorsed him, and we do that as well. And part of our role is not just in nonprofit world. We have a C3, which is a tax-deductible nonprofit that takes in money to do education work. We're also a C4, and C4 allows us to do political work. And so we do endorse candidates. We have an entire process where we have candidates fill out a questionnaire. They come meet with the organizing team. So if they're running for office in Brattleboro, they would meet with Brattleboro people. And if so it's not we have some central committee and it's only like 4 people in a back room making decisions. This is very member-driven. So they fill out the questionnaire, members read it, they come to a meeting, members get to ask them questions and probe them more on their answers. And then from there they take a vote. And if they endorse, those members turn into powerhouse volunteers, standing out at honkin' waves,
right.
Knocking on doors, dropping leaflets, making phone calls. And that's where Rights and Democracy, that's where it helps.
And so can anyone in Vermont and New Hampshire be a member of Rights and Democracy?
We set a pretty low bar for membership.
Okay.
And in those cases, it's signing a petition, it's signing up for our the emails that we send out, weekly or more, letting people know about actions they can be taking, places they can show up, or organizing meetings which are open to everybody and welcoming for everybody, and because we feel as if, in order to sort of make this movement build, we need to create welcoming spaces for people to come with their concerns and their issues and have them respected and valued in a group of people, to help them find an avenue or path to maybe the change they want to see, and to empower them in being that change, because that's part of it. This is not, it's not like we've come up with this magical, way of just sort of bringing people in the room and then we teach you how to do this, because it's not how it works. Real world doesn't work that, and organizing power doesn't work that way. So that's why we have this very decentralized model where, I don't know every day what the Bennington organizing team is doing. Right. I know what they're working on, and they'll let me know if they have something they want to help spread the word about. But our biggest organizing team is in Bennington. We sort of think about the kind of values we bring on these economic, environmental, racial, social justice issues, like raising the minimum wage and paid family medical leave, and racial justice reform, and energy democracy, and movement politics. These are sort of small p progressive ideas, but our largest chapter is Bennington, which is not a liberal part of the state. Neither is Rutland, and we have an active member in Rutland who was elected to the Board of Aldermen. We had she's wonderful, and we had another woman who a year ago was yelling at her TV and then in the following March ran for select board in Bennington. She didn't win the first time out, but she's going to do it again. I mean, those stories, I mean, like, that's what makes me sort of think like we've tapped into something.
Yeah, for me, I think coming from rural Vermont, it's nice to see an organization like this that is focused on anything right down to a city councilor or a select board member or planning commission, even, which is just so, it's kind of like we had Madeline Coonan on, who was talking about getting these people in 2018 to run at town meeting day for any position.
Right.
You don't have to automatically go for the legislature. You can start in your hometown.
Right, and that's how you build, and that's also the model we work on, that sort of decentralized model of allowing a community to build power. So it's not like Burlington is telling Bennington how to do things, or like where I grew up. I mean, I grew up in the Northeast Kingdom. It's like there's no way anybody from Burlington is going to tell people in the Northeast Kingdom how to organize. I mean, that's like no.
Yeah.
But that's why it's really has to be built in from that community network of people coming together and running for all those offices, which is equally important. I mean, because if we've learned nothing, in the past 30 years, I mean, the right got it. I mean, they put a lot of money into training people on how to run for offices at every single level, because you build power each step of those ways. So this idea that you just run for governor or run for legislature misses all these other important parts that really help keep not only candidates connected to their community, but their community vested in making sure that that person succeeds. And that's also, part of like sort of what the beauty of Ali's campaign was. It started with a small nucleus of people, but as he door knocked and as he reached out and as people connected with him and understood his message, I mean, his power base just continued to grow. I mean, to win an election in that neck of the woods in Burlington, 62% of the vote in a four-way race was just remarkable. I mean, it was a testament to the candidate and to all the volunteers who just did, and it takes a lot of people doing little things. Like, there was no like one volunteer who did everything. There was a few people who did like core work, but there were so many people showing up at his house on a Saturday just to sort of say, well, how can I help? I'll put out signs, like, I'll go do this, and it was great to sort of see that kind of thing happen. And those are the victories we like to see all over the state, and what we're hoping to see more of. And we're focused very much this summer. We're doing a series of town halls throughout the state, working with local groups. It could be like NEK Indivisible, or it could be other groups around, and other nonprofits around the state who are doing advocacy work like we do. We've talked to Brenda Churchill, LGBTQIAA, and sort of how can we bring more of the sort of that alliance into some of these town halls, and sort of making sure that we're being as not just inclusive, because we need to have everybody come in. And so we're going to be doing those all around the state, and to sort of help communities, even in places where we already are, bringing new members in, because there's such this need out there, not just to sort of take action, but this sort of sense of like reassessing sort of who we are and where we're going, and sort of bringing people in community together in that way helps for folks to kind of shape how it is they want to see their communities reflected, and how they want to see it reflected going forward, and what changes they want to make. And so that's, to me, I mean, we're very much looking forward to this. We had a kickoff party a couple weeks ago at the North End Studios in Burlington. That's where we live streamed everything from. But we had house parties all over the state. Putney, Hancock, Middletown Springs, I mean, places that you wouldn't normally think of. And there were people, like, and it was, whether it was 5 or 20 people, they were watching too. And that's that to me. It's like, in having grown up in Vermont and lived in like almost every corner of the state, that's the part that I love about rights and democracy. It's it's not just sort of this sort of top-down thing that's like idea that's come out of Burlington. This is something that's really been percolating, throughout.
So rights and democracy sounds like a true like community organizing organization.
Yep.
So you are just focusing on the smaller communities and then coming together as one large statewide, bi-statewide community.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been very involved in some of these like bigger organizing events. I mean, Elise Greaves, who's our lead organizer, was, and Katie McCarty, who is our our development director and does some of our admin work. I mean, they were two very strong women leaders who were part of organizing the Women's March in Montpelier, which 20,000 people. I mean, shut down the interstate. I mean, we organized that. We were, Elise was also part of the group that helped organize the climate rally that happened. That was also sort of like the solidarity rally. 5,000 people. I mean, so this is ways like, we try to then bring these people together, because those national sort of affinity and solidarity actions are also important to reflect those sort of values. But it's a way to bring those people together and help them also then find out about us and other organizations that are doing amazing work.
Right. And you have a busy summer coming up in regards to like collecting and bringing everyone together.
Yeah.
Focusing on 4 key issues.
Right.
So that includes like economic justice, healthcare justice, environmental justice, and movement politics. That seems like a big list to tackle.
It is. It's huge. It's why we need all these members, because, we're a small staff. This is not, we help do a lot of support work, but really, it's member leaders are the ones who are, really take this and run with it. Whether it's, fighting for raising the minimum wage or paid family medical leave. I mean, our goal is to kind of help, find the conduits for them to get, in front of a lawmaker, and testify at the legislature, speak out in public, write letters to the editor, op-ed pieces. We've had a series of ongoing national days of action around the GOP healthcare bills that are sort of, percolating in DC, that we're trying to not just resist, but also, how else can we be moving forward in Vermont. And the event we had in Montpelier was led, by, Mari Cordes, who, ran for office and lost, but ran an incredible race in Addison County in 2016. She was the MC and the leader of that. I mean, she's not a staff member, but she is a member leader who is very vested in healthcare justice. She was also last week got arrested in D.C. She was one of the 40 protesters who was arrested in Senator Marco Rubio's office. She got arrested in nursing scrubs, protesting this bill and asking for more hearings and asking for this to stop. So, that's where this stuff happens. So we, and the way we find too is in these communities, like, all of those issues, whether it's raising the minimum wage, whether it's paid family medical leave, whether it's energy democracy, which is about moving forward with renewable energy, but allowing more communities to both own and manage those natural resources. So it's not just the power is not flowing somewhere else and the money is not flowing somewhere else. It's all staying here locally. And then movement politics, which we've all talked about. All of that is connected, and I think that's the core thing why we have this sort of multi-issue organization is. There's multiple entry points for people to come together. We don't want anyone to feel as if they couldn't come to a Rights and Democracy meeting because, well, that's not my issue. Well, which issue is it not? Because really, it's about all of them.
Right.
Right, as you listed. And I think that for us is the most important part. And also, the more that we bring together those people who are working and interested in those individual issues, and the more that we can be seeing how all of them are interconnected, really it helps to sort of reconfigure that sort of shared sense of values that we have, as a state, as communities, and fighting for true justice and true change.
Right, and it seems like everyone can get invested in this movement because, as you said, like everyone's fighting for their own beliefs, but
Right.
in this, like they're all connected at the end of the day.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
It
Yeah.
seems like such a great movement.
It is, and we're not even 2 years old yet, which I think is,
Right.
I think a testament to just, we've tapped into something that I think has been missing, both in politics as well as in just in organizing and just how people organize.
And it feels like you've been committed to social change for a long time now.
Yes.
Because before this, you wrote a column in the 7 Days called Fair Game.
Correct.
And you covered a wide variety of topics
Yes.
every week. How was that? Like,
Yeah.
Do you miss it?
Sometimes, I'll say I miss it, but I will say, like, with the work I get to do at Rights and Democracy, it was a lot. It's a lot of fun to sort of, in the role I had as a political columnist and as a investigative columnist, it was fun to kind of hold, people in power accountable. Mm-hmm. And really, always remembering my neighbors in the kingdom, like what were the questions they would ask if they were sitting down at a table with all of the elected officials from the state. And, keeping that sort of like very sort of, community mindset in everything I did, that sort of working class, mindset. I mean, I, grew up in the kingdom, I was the oldest of 3, single mom, like on any program imaginable. I mean, so I get to this point where I have the chance to ask someone in power a question. Like, I don't forget all of that, it's like I don't forget everything that like got me to where I was. And so if someone's out there saying, they want to, cut food stamps or, cut free lunch or cut this, I'm like, so you're telling me that like I didn't deserve any of that. And I know so many people who, were able to get out of whatever they were doing and to go and be who they wanted to be because they had those supports. And so I always took that sort of like social justice component and really did that. So people would say like, oh, like, well, you have a, you take sides. I'm like, yeah, I do. And as a columnist, it was my job to take sides. But I always felt like my job was to take sides with people who were either being shut out, oppressed, or whose voices were being not heard or not listened to and not in the room. And so, that's why I would focus on a whole range of things. And this was before, I've talked about this elsewhere too, but, I've had, we have 2 openly queer kids and a kid on the autistic spectrum. So it's like, as a parent, you can't ignore those, right? As a human being, you can't ignore those, and it informs everything you do. And I've been that way from the beginning. When I first came on staff, one of the lead organizers, Maria, who's in New Hampshire, she was like, you do all this stuff, and you have these kids, and all these challenges and these things you have to fight for. It's like, how do you do it? I'm like, well, how do you not do it? Like, how do you not, sit there and say, and not like, how as a parent can you not say you don't love your child, because of whatever, like who they love, how they identify. I mean, like, it matters. They're my kid, and and I'll be damned if anyone's going to tell them they can't.
You're not even thinking twice about it, right?
I'll be damned if I'm going to tell them like, well, you can't be that way in front of this person. It's like, come on, like that person needs to think about how you can be, valued and respected right here next to me, because that's who you are. And it's like, so the column was a great avenue for me after years of just doing investigative journalism, of actually having to put a voice to it and an edge to it and hold people accountable in ways that would make them feel, in some cases, uncomfortable, because we need a little of that, and it wasn't to be mean-spirited. It was to really sort of say, there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot of pain that you're not thinking about here that we really need to be recognizing.
And it feels like change comes out of feeling that uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
You have to sit in that for a bit before change is actually going to happen.
You do, absolutely. And I can say like that's, and as and I feel like I'm always doing that. I mean, with kids, and just in general, like there's always more that I'm willing to make myself feel uncomfortable with, because it's the only way I'm going to move forward on issues for myself, is if I sort of get outside of my comfort zone a little bit more, and moving people outside of that comfort zone and understanding how, all of this stuff is really connected, and it's really, because I think that was always what I was sort of, missing. There was this great reporter in the State House. I mean, it's an old saying, but her motto was, to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And I always felt like that was, I got into journalism, from a public service perspective of like feeling like I wanted to inform my community. I started writing for like the Barton Chronicle when I was in high school, and absolutely just fell in love with being able to go and tell a story that had an impact and like informed people about their community. And I really felt like that was just like, if I'm going to be, if I was going to, study writing, it's like I wasn't going to make my living as like a poet, but I could make my living as a journalist and tell stories and inform people about what's going on, and hopefully either spur action or dialogue or whatever it was to kind of keep us, kind of going forward. And so, so the column was just like, it was really, it was a great way to kind of end, so to speak, my journalistic part of my career, because it just really allowed me to kind of have a platform that was a little bit different than just writing articles.
But it's great because I feel like now you're very well connected, probably, yes. I'm sure, and it's probably helped you tremendously with your role at Rights and Democracy.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And so we'll leave by having you inform our viewers how they can get involved with the organization.
Sure. So it's pretty easy. So if you're probably watching this, you're probably in Vermont. So, but you never know. It's the internet. So,
right.
But if you want to connect with Rights and democracy in Vermont, it's radvt.org. Rights and democracy. It's a really nice acronym, RAD.
Yeah.
So we love it. So we use it all we can.
Rad.
So it's radvt.org. That's our website, and from there you can find out more about how to connect with us, how to become members, where our organizing. We list all of our organizing team meetings as events on our website. We also have a Facebook page like everybody does, where we also list all these events where people can connect, whether they're mass rallies or these organizing teams that meet all throughout the state. These democracy town halls, we already have dates for a lot of them in July and August. And they're happening all over the place, and people can be showing up to those as well. And if you're in New Hampshire, it's radnh.org. And they're also doing a lot of work over there. And they do different work than us. In fact, I think one of the things that they're doing over there that I would love, we've talked about here in bringing in Vermont too, what's interesting over there is that they had, coming out of the organizing movement around Bernie's campaign, when sort of things were done, a group of the organizers who've been door knocking were all identified as transgender. And so a lot of them were trying to figure out what to do next. So what they did was they formed within Rights and Democracy a transgender organizing leadership development group in New Hampshire to then fight for transgender rights and working for sort of broader LGBTQ rights, workplace protections, anti-discrimination legislation. And that to me is like a great story of like how Rights and Democracy works, not just in Vermont, but then also in New Hampshire, filling a need that is much more pronounced over there than say like when one of those leaders was here to do a training with us, our offices are in the Champlain Senior Center. And so for people who might not know, that building is also occupied by the Burlington Children's Space and by a very dear organization that's like near and dear to our family's heart, which is Outright Vermont. And there is no physical space like that in New Hampshire. And when this individual, when they saw this, and I was talking to them about this, they were like, we don't have a physical space like that. And I'm like, well, maybe that's something we should be. Maybe that's part of what Told could do, and so that's part of that leadership sort of development that we like to do, not just in sort of political spaces, but also in issue spaces to help people, go and then like testify before the legislature on these bills. When a year before they were terrified to pick up a phone and call somebody to phone bank them, that kind of path. It's just incredibly, I love, those are the stories I just love to tell.
It's empowering.
Because it's empowering and because it's possible.
Yeah.
And we being the vehicle of that is just, is great. So, I sort of say, so if you're in New Hampshire and if you have friends in New Hampshire, let them know, because they're doing some amazing work that's not all the same here, because there's amazing groups doing that kind of work here in Vermont. In New Hampshire, it's less so. And so our organizers and sort of the member leaders there figured like, we need to fill that role, because there's nobody here fighting for those rights. And so, we'll see. Maybe there'll be a Rad Maine next.
So it's RAD-VT
Yes.
and radnh.org.
Yes.
Perfect.
Well,
Tubular.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those stories, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so
Lovely
much.
meeting you and having you here.
Same here. This is great. Thank you.
Thanks.